Hey, what's up, art geeks? How's everybody doing? I am doing pretty well, and I thought, why not show the process to this painting right here behind me? I have been working on this one since February. It has been a long process. I have worked way too hard on it. There are way too many layers. I'm on like layer 1 million. I don't know. It's a lot. There's so much great texture though from it. And I think I'm really close. I'm like 95% done. Now, the reason it's taking me so long is because I have been experimenting. This is an experimental piece. I really haven't done anything like this. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, but I'm gonna go ahead, share the process. I'm gonna show you a lot of the footage that I recorded for this painting. So let's go ahead and let's get started right now. All right, like any painting, I have to start with a conceptual image, which you can see over to the left there. It took a little bit of time to get it to the right place. I had to use a mix of a couple different photos to actually get the right pose. Because this was an experimental painting, I really didn't know where I wanted to go with it, and just a lot of trial and error, especially in Photoshop. I was bouncing around. I ended up with maybe 20 or 30 layers to this painting because it was just the Photoshop part was very frustrating to get the hands and feet and head and the pose just how I wanted it. I didn't have a lot of model photography to work with. At the very end of a photo shoot, I decided to ask a model of mine to just kind of pose like she was floating. So I had her sitting on the ground on a yoga mat and just kind of, kicking her feet up in the air and her hands in the air and acting like she was kind of falling or floating in the air. And it worked out okay. So I think going forward with this series, I think if I just know ahead of time like the poses I want and what I'm, the best way to get that floating feeling and how the clothing's going to interact with the gravity and things like that. There's a lot of gravity issues. As you can tell with this one, it comes along pretty well. I get to this point where I finally get the composition where I want it. As you see it here, this is really close to where I want the composition, and I'm finally getting the colors where I want them. That was the hardest thing, is deciding, do I want to use a warmer background, cooler background to interact with those warmer colors? I thought at first I'd go with some slightly cooler colors in the background, but I found that having just an off red and almost a very, very light pink is the way to go for the upper sort of horizon, or the upper lighter area of the painting, but not too light. I wanted her shirt, as you can see, she's wearing sort of just a basic tank top that's white, and I wanted that to be the part that really popped the most. So I made sure that had the brightest whites in the whole painting, so everything kind of led your eye to that center portion of her figure. And then I started having fun. I finally landed on wanting it to be a little bit more on the warmer side, on the left side of her body, her feet to, through that skirt that she's wearing. I wanted that to all be the warmer colors. And then sort of slowly, gradually work its way into brighter reds on the right side. The one part I think that was really holding me up though is just getting that balance of abstraction, getting the level of detail right. As you can see now, I'm just trying to get the arm drawn just right. I'm redrawing it probably for the second or third time because I wasn't getting the right feel to it, and it was just becoming very frustrating to get the edge control where I wanted it. Everything's down to level of detail, and when you have a smaller figure like this where you see the whole figure from head to toe, but you want to keep it loose, you got to make sure that looseness stays fairly consistent throughout the painting or it won't feel right. Now, there's always room to play with that level of detail depending on where you're at, but I wanted the level of detail. I wanted there to be some nice soft edges, but I also wanted to have some nice hard edges from the abstraction. So the abstraction is where I played around the most, in the hair and on the side of the body there where the red's at, with a lot of fun gestural brush strokes. Tried to push the impressionism as much as I could. But as you can see now, I'm finally getting that hand, the level of, the brightness, the light exposure. I'm kind of brightening that up a little bit at this point. And I'm really taking my time. All this that you're seeing now happened within the last couple of days of me working on this painting, because I finally was getting a clear vision of what I wanted for this painting. I think, at first, I think I was just overcomplicating things. I wasn't doing things in a procedure that made sense. I found that making sure that everything is in place, making sure the body is drawn properly before I get ahead of myself is one of the keys that could have saved a lot of time. But just not having, I think the biggest part that slowed me down, especially during the beginning part of this painting, was just not knowing what colors I wanted. You can spend so much time and waste so much paint playing with colors if you don't really have a clear vision. So I should have utilized Photoshop a bit more and trusted my vision. I wasn't really trusting it, and I think between that and not really knowing how loose I wanted it and how to approach the level of detail, like do I want there to be just some massive brush strokes that just barely give an indication of the hands? Do I want to see the individual fingers? Do I want to see the feet, like each foot? Do I want both hands to be the same level of detail? Do I want one to be very, very loose and abstract? I ended up deciding that I wanted everything, the feet and the hands, to be fairly similar in size. And right now you can kind of tell that the 2 feet on the left are not really matching up as far as their scale. That'll get fixed here in a little bit. That foot, I just need to kind of trim it down a little bit. And plus, it's just the camera angle itself is kind of causing that foot to look a little bit bigger than it really is supposed to be, or than it really is in reality, actually. But it's coming along to, where I'm getting all that figured out and making some final touches on the darker part, just playing around with some different tools. I love breaking out my palette knives and some of my other painting tools that are not brushes, just to give some different textures to things. But for the most part, this painting ended up being, I'd say, 90% brush. And halfway through, I actually switched to a different style of brush. I love using my Trekell brushes, by the way. Check out Trekell if you want to use a great brush. I've been using Trekells now for years, and I ended up trying, I usually use the opals, the AP, it's APAL is the brand name or the style name of the brush. It's a flat synthetic hog bristle or hog hair bristle brush. But I switched. Right now, you're actually seeing me use a bright, which is a shorter flat, a very short flat, as they call brights. And these brights are with a synthetic, but it's with a very fine hair synthetic so that the brush marks don't pronounce themselves as much, which I was really liking. You can still get really great brush marks, but I did like that the grooves that it was putting between the bristles themselves weren't causing a bunch of extra grooves in the surface of my painting. I feel like I'm starting to gravitate towards a different subtle type of brush mark. And when you get a fine hair bristle, it just makes a big difference as far as what kind of texture you leave behind. You can leave some really good thick brush marks, but the individual bristles on the brush don't create these really deep grooves to your paint, especially if you're using thicker paint that isn't watered down as much, which I tend to use thicker opaque paint. So I wanted to control that. I wanted to kind of reduce that level of texture down a little bit, but still show those brush marks in a satisfying way. Because if I don't have, I love to play with some texture, or I love to show my brush marks, but there's a little bit of everything. You can kind of see that the hands themselves are a little bit smoother. There's not as much brush work, the arms and hands. But then in the head, where I'm kind of working around now, I decide that's where I can really have some fun with some brush marks. So I get this really nice loose interpretation to the face itself in this painting. And I'm not quite done with it yet. I'm kind of still just playing around with the background, trying to get that little space above her stomach to kind of gradiate like it does on the other sides of her body, on the far right and far left, to get that to feel like she's almost floating above some clouds is kind of what it feels like, I think, is like she's almost floating right at this horizon line of abstract clouds. And finally, I'm starting to have some fun with getting some more of those orange textures, getting some more brush marks. And again, I'm just using those brights, they are called spectrum brushes. That's the style from Trekell that I'm using, or the brights. Check out the spectrums. They are amazing. They have a really nice soft touch to them. They don't leave a ton of texture, but they do leave, they can leave brush marks just fine. It's just they leave a different style, and I'm actually starting to appreciate that more than the hog style bristle. And at this point, I'm just finally starting to put some final touches on getting both feet to feel the same. Now you can kind of tell they both feel like the same size foot. Didn't look like, now it looks like that she's wearing size 8 shoes versus one size 12 and one is size 4. They're balanced out a little bit better now, so that helped out quite a bit. But I think everything turned out pretty well with this painting. I'm just getting some final brush marks here before I call it a day, and that's it. That's where I'm at now. I'm hoping that's it for this painting. We'll see how it goes, but let me know what you think in the comments of this painting. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you so much for checking out this video. I'll talk to you again next week. All right, bye.